and welcome. You've landed on Zero Limits Living. I'm Dr. Joe Vitale. Every week, I bring you inspiration and information to transform your life. This show has become so popular, you can now see it or watch it or hear it on 1,000 different platforms across the galaxy, including Amazon, Apple, Spotify, and YouTube, and probably anything you could name. I'm putting all of the episodes in one place for your convenience. You can go to ZeroLimitsLivingTV.com, ZeroLimitsLivingTV.com, and enjoy, have a binge, have a party, watch all the episodes, and I'm posting new ones every week. You can sign up there to be notified when a new one is posted so you don't miss any of them. Also, I want to invite you to check out Miracles Coaching. I started it almost 20 years ago. It is proven, it is tested, it is trademarked. It is a system that works. And I invite you to find out more, no cost, no obligation. Simply go to miraclescoaching.com and check it out. Also, I have a brand new program, and because it's doing so well, I have to brag a little bit and just invite you to go check it out. It's called mentaltimetravel.system.com. That's right, it's about time travel, mental time travel. Go to mentaltimetravel.system.com and find out what I've been up to in the past, in the future, and now. And speaking of now, let's go into today's episode. I'm very excited because the man I'm interviewing has interviewed me over the years, and I've been anxious to pick his brains. I want to learn about sales. I want to learn about goal setting. I want to learn about taking action. I want to learn about motivation. And I want to learn about success in karate. Let me tell you about my guest today. Put my glasses on so I don't stumble too badly over the intro. Peter Jumrukovski was exposed to both sales and the world of martial arts from a very early age by his father, who apparently was his coach and mentor. And Peter's experience in martial arts led to him winning a gold medal as a world medalist in karate. And I think there were several other medals, which is why I was pausing. I was thinking, I think there's 7 or 8 or 9 other medals this man has won. So we'll find out from the man himself shortly. After that incredible accomplishment of the one medal, he went and moved from Sweden to the United States, where he pursued a career and still does in luxury real estate. And he's apparently been breaking records there and helping people with sales of real estate. He's also the founder of the I Love Success podcast. He started it many years ago, over 5 years ago. He's done 250 sessions, including at least one with me. And he's been interviewing some of the most accomplished, disciplined, and inspiring individuals of all time, including Olympic medalist, leading real estate entrepreneurs, top-ranking UFC champions, doctors, thought leaders, and more. Peter is a mover and shaker. In fact, one of the reasons I wanted to get him on the show is I love his goal. His goal is to help at least 10 million people in 10 years. He's already off and running and making that happen. And I want to help him in doing that. And I want to help everybody watching and listening today. So, Peter, come on to the stage. How are you?
Thank you so much, Dr. Joe. And before we get started, I just want to say that being interviewed by someone like yourself, it's a dream come true for me. So I'm sitting here, with goosebumps, and this is a surreal moment that someone like you is introducing me. So first of all, thank you. I'm very grateful for this opportunity, and I'm only here for one reason today, and that is to give away as much value as I possibly can. So thanks again for making this happen and having me on.
Well, I know you're a man who gives away value because your mission to help 10 million people in 10 years is very notable, very heroic, and I'm on your side. I'm walking in that parade with you. And that's what I want to do here. All the people watching this show, all the people who ultimately listen to this show, I want to help them. So with your help, let's give them value. Let's make a difference. But let's go back to Sweden. Let's
Yep.
go back. That's where you're from, correct? You're from Sweden?
Yeah, originally I'm actually Macedonian. That's my heritage. I was born in Sweden. My father emigrated when he was 19 years old to Sweden with the plastic bag basically, and started his a new life. And I got the opportunity to be born in one of the greatest countries in the world, I would say.
You are amazing. And we have to pause and really acknowledge people like your father because they do take a bag, plastic bag, paper bag, and sometimes no bag at all, and go on to pursue a dream. And and they do it. They do it. And here most of us are sitting around complaining about what we have or what we're not doing. And we live compared to that, the lifestyles of the rich and famous. We've got luxury better than ancient kings and queens. And so we don't really have any excuses when we look at somebody like your father. So I applaud your father and congratulations on him making the move that enabled you to do what you're doing today. Was he into karate? How did you get into karate?
Yeah, so basically, to make a long story short, he was always curious about martial arts, and he found a place uh, close to his hometown, and he found one of the pioneers of karate in Sweden. His sensei, which is a coach, is called. He was working on the boats which were traveling to Japan, and when he was off there, he started studying judo. His name is Roy Anderson, and then he came back and started teaching as a yellow belt at that time. There was not many karate schools at all, but my father was fascinated by this, and he started training. He when he started, he always tells the story. It was a long line. I'm sure you guys know people line up before and after training, and he was the white belt. And he when he stood there, he didn't call it visualization, but now I know it's visualization. He saw, I'm going to be a black belt very shortly, and he told that to his peers at work, and they all laughed at him because he was an immigrant and he didn't have much at the time, but he knew that. So come 3 or 4 years later, at that time becoming a black belt was very honorable. Today it's so many black belts, it's much easier, it's commercialized, but at
Yeah.
that time there were 10 people that was trying to get the test, and a Japanese sensei had to come in to do their grading, and there was only four that passed out of 10, and the other three was in the national team. And that was very notable and a big experience. And right after that, in 1977, my father started his karate school, which is now 45 years in the making. He's still making a difference, not only in teaching people how to kick and punch. I think that's the last thing, that's one of the things, but the most important thing is to lead a good life. And that's what he has taught me, how to go after what you want, be honorable, keep your word, be disciplined. And that's why every week he gets an email or a flower or somebody coming and say, hey, thank you so much, not for winning a medal, which is cool, but for creating a good life and helping others.
That is so beautiful. So he started his school in the mid 70s? Would that have been
1977, yeah.
1977? So that's after Bruce Lee came to America. That's also when Kung Fu, which made karate really popular and Kung Fu
Yeah,
in America anyway, the TV series was out
yeah.
because I studied karate around 1970,
Oh, you did?
largely because of the TV show, which made
Yeah,
karate schools open up around the world. I can't think of what the fellow's name. He was very popular in the States. What
yeah.
what age were you when you started learning karate?
I was 6 years old. So I was always at the karate school with my father. I didn't want to train. I just played around in the sports hall, but I watched the Karate Kid, and I was 6 years old. This was
Mm,
1992. And there's a
mm,
specific scene where Mr. Miyagi, and now there's even something called Miyagi-ism now, because all of his saying, people that are passionate about the Karate Kid, that they've seen their philosophy behind it is actually pretty cool.
mhm,
And there's a scene where he talks to Daniel San, and he say karate is like walking on road. If you're a grape, either you walk on the right side, you're safe, or you walk on the left side, you're safe. If you walk in the middle, sooner or later you get squished.
mm,
So Mr. Miyagi say, either you do karate do yes, or you do karate do no. If you do karate do I guess so, sooner or later you'll get squished. And it's crazy. I was 6 years old, but I still remember this vividly. And I went to my father and said, I want to train karate. And since then, I've been training, and this has kind of been helping me in my whole life. Either you do something or you don't do something.
And that's a remarkable statement right there. Either you do something or you don't do something. There's a clear
Yeah.
decision. So you started when you were 6 years old. Did you maintain that practice throughout? In other words, do you have from six to now consistent practice and learning in karate?
Yes. The older I get, the less is the physical part, and the more is becoming a black belt in the reality of the world.
Wow.
But I've been training karate since I was six, basically every day.
And at what age are you now?
37.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And your father is still with us and he is still
Yep.
teaching?
He's 71 years old. He was born in 1951, and
Mhm.
he's still teaching 4 times a week. He loves it, and he's still, I would say, a real life Miyagi.
That is so beautiful. Did you see the Netflix series Cobra Kai?
Yeah, and I'm actually reading what Daniel LaRusso's book right now
Oh, that's
about.
right.
It's very interesting to see kind of his the story behind it and learn more. And I like what they have done, and they're showing that there are different ways of life. And now you also get to see that the bully also was bullied in a way. So there's
Yes.
so much to learn.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. Well, since you have so much experience in karate, and karate is more than a self defense system, we know it as a way of life. What are a few principles that you gained, top level principles that we can relate to? So, again, we want to give value to the people watching Zero Limits Living. And so, how would you help them with some of the things you've learned since the age of six, 30 years of learning? What would you share?
So when you train as a karateka, as we call it, karate practitioner, there's
Mhm.
a way of life called bushido, which is the way of the warrior. A bushi is a warrior, and this type of warrior that you learn or supposed to learn is a noble warrior. And what I mean with that is that the number one thing is your honor and doing what's right, even when it's difficult. So that's something that I've learned in life. And we constantly get challenged, especially if you're in sales or in business, where you get these opportunities where you can do the wrong thing and get a gain personally, but it's not the right thing. And I think
Mm,
everybody gets those opportunities in life. But if you have your core values, you know what to do. And the answer is very simple. So that's one thing. Stick
mhm,
to your values and find out what they are and do what's right, even when it's hard.
mhm,
Uh, that's one thing. Another thing that's for me very important is when I say something, it's like it's already done. And that is something that has helped me tremendously in my life. And that's why I always get surprised when people say something and then it never happens. For me, in my mind, I can be honest and say everything I decide is not always happening the way I want to, but my input is there and my commitment is there. And if I tell you, Dr. Joe, let's meet at the Great Wall of China in 10 years on this specific location, I don't have to speak to you in a decade. I'll be there and I'll meet you, even if you're not there. And I think that level of commitment to your own word, your own honor,
mm.
that's something that is, for me, very beautiful. It's gotten me so many deep relationships in my life. And I have people to call all over the world if I need something. I never have any problems. And it's not because I'm a good person, it's because I have kept my word to those
Mhm,
people and they
mhm.
acknowledge that.
Let's look at that for a second. You heard my introduction, and one of my new programs is the mental time travel system. Within that system, I have 15 principles about attracting and achieving what you want. And these are 15 principles that I think most people don't talk about. But one of those principles is to increase your power, keep your word. To increase your power, keep your word. So I want to dissect that for a second and
Yeah.
have you explain it a little bit. My way of explaining it is when you say you're going to do something to another person or to yourself, you must do it. You must do it because it will increase your internal power and it'll increase your loyalty to the other person, your believability, your credibility to the other person. By the same token, on the other side of it, if you tell somebody you're going to do something and you don't, they learn not to trust you. But here's the more important thing: your own mind learns not to trust you. If you say you're going to do something and you don't do it, your mind thinks, well, you didn't do it before, so you must be a liar. You must not be telling the truth. And then one more step into this, and then I'm going to let you elaborate in your way, is the universe is listening. You can call that God or the divine or the higher power or the cosmos or whatever you want to call the great something, but it's listening. And so if you say you're going to do something and you don't do it, and you ask the universe to do something for you, it doesn't believe you, and it doesn't even believe you want it because you haven't kept your word to yourself to begin with. Now, am I off track, or does that elaborate what you're referring to?
That's exactly what I'm referring to. I don't think I can explain it any better. I think
Hmm.
it's self love. To do what you say you're gonna do is self love, and it adds to your confidence. And for
Yeah.
most people, doing what you say is so important. I can say, if we take it to a next level, somebody like you and me, sometimes when we say that we're gonna do something, it's so important to us that we do it even when we shouldn't do it sometimes. And that finding that balance is a completely different level. And I'm learning that as I'm getting older, that it's okay to change. But if you always change, then you never see anything through.
Mm.
So I think for people that, if you haven't been true to yourself, start being true to yourself. But if you are super disciplined and a really go getter, also realize that don't be so hard on yourself, because sometimes you can go off track, and that's okay, or you can find something better.
And I also want to point out that you and I agreed to be here to do this recording at exactly 4 p.m. My time anyway. And suddenly, minutes before it, there was a power outage. And then I'm scrambling to find you, to call you, or to email you to alert you.
Yeah.
And so there was an outer circumstance that interrupted my promise. My
Yeah.
promise was you and I are going to meet, and Chris, who's running the studio and the electronics, is going to meet all at this designated time. But then there's something that came from the universe, from the cosmos, or it came to help us illustrate this very point,
Yeah.
that you cannot control the world.
Yeah.
You have control over what you say and do and believe and so forth, and you have influence over the world, and you can put requests into the world. But if something happens, it didn't mean that I wasn't going to show up. It
Yeah.
didn't mean that I wasn't going to do the interview. It didn't mean that you were going to blow me off and say, oh, Joe's untrustworthy. You at least gave me the opportunity to say, what's going on?
Yeah.
Power went down, meet me in 10 minutes, and now we're doing the interview. Would you
Yeah.
agree that we have
I
to have
would.
some adaptability?
We need adapt and overcome, and that's something that I'm learning and becoming better. Take it back to competing in martial arts. When
Yeah.
I remember my second competition, I lost 8-0 to a very quick guy, and he did this exact same technique on me 8 times. That doesn't mean I was bad at karate. It just meant that I didn't know how to adapt quickly. And
Mm,
he took advantage of that, right? So
mhm.
we all now I'm getting better at that. But I think if you're listening to it, we do get stuck sometimes in our own mind or in our own worry, and then we let the same thing happen to us over and over again, and and then we don't realize how did it happen so quickly. But take a step back. Now I was 15. It's 22 years ago. I realized that I did not adapt at the same time. I could have made
Yeah.
a very simple thing, which is change my guard, and he wouldn't be able to do that technique. That means that the only thing I had to do was to change places of my two legs, which any idiot can do. Pardon my language, but I couldn't get it in that moment.
Mhm. Well, this brings up a question. What about failure and setbacks? How have you learned to handle failure and setbacks? So that may have been 20 some years ago and you're 15 years old. But you must have felt in some way like you either failed or you didn't pass. That you use some terminology. What have you learned to do with a failure, with a setback, with a disappointment? Because we know a lot of people watching or listening have gone through aspects of that and may still be going through that.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are living in a protected environment where not um, they're not encouraged to fail. And when I say fail, to make mistakes and to learn. And
Hmm.
they hit themselves so hard with all these failures. I'm lucky that I was able to compete at a high level because there were so many fighters that were so much better than me and that could whoop my ass. So I had to go back to the drawing board time and time again to become better. But
Hmm.
it takes the commitment of it doesn't have to be a martial artist, but the way for me was I'm doing this. So there was no way, every time I lost, I didn't question if I'm doing this anymore. It was more like, okay, how can I do this better? And I think
Ah.
that's the main thing. A lot of people they haven't made up their mind. So if they hit a setback, all of a sudden they are everybody feels bad. It's not nice. I've been beaten so well, like I've been owned basically, and I didn't know where to go because I was so embarrassed.
Hmm.
Uh, but you learn from that, and to sit in that is actually pretty good because you learn to understand who are your friends, how do you speak to yourself, what is your ego, and how important is that in your life. So all of these are for me very good blessings, and it has taught me so many things that is helping me in my life because let's face it, we have challenges all around us all the time.
Right. I interviewed Russell Brunson early on for this show, and I remember he said that he likes to work with athletes who go into business. And when I asked why, he said because they're used to failure and they don't take it personally.
Yeah.
And what he went on to elaborate is that an athlete has already been accustomed, like Russell's into wrestling and maybe some other, I forget what else, but he knows what it's like to fail. But when he
Yeah.
fails at a wrestling match, it doesn't mean he personally failed. It just means he failed that particular practice match and do whatever the new skills are and rehearse them, learn what he has to learn, and go on to the next one. And if a entrepreneur can apply that mentality to business, they can recover quickly and keep on going. So that's what I'm hearing from you is that it's not really a dead stop, give up kind of a spirit. It's like, well, that didn't work. What do I need to learn? And then get up and go to the next mat. Correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And trust me, it's not, this is a 10 years, 20 years of
Yeah.
work. The first couple of hundred times I failed, I took it very personally. And I was sad, and I was thinking to myself, how can these people be so good? What are they doing differently than me? I'm trying so hard, and there were so many questions in my life, but the one thing that I learned from martial arts is that you show up. You're
Mm.
there and you made the commitment. I'm going to do this. So now I'm going to do it no matter what. And I have to sit with that feeling. And it's okay to sit with the feeling that other people are, better than you in a specific field. Doesn't mean that they're better human beings than you, but that's just part of life. And that if you're not willing to be in that environment, it's sad because you're missing out on so many beautiful things that life has to offer.
Hmm. Well, this raises the question, why didn't you give up? The easy answer is your father had the karate school, and your father
Yeah.
was somebody you probably didn't want to disappoint. But why did you get up, even if that was over a 10-year period and 100 or hundreds of times where you didn't pass or you failed in ways that you say were embarrassing? Why did you keep going? Well, I'll say one more thing while you think of your answer there for a second. I did study karate around 1970 there, and I loved it. A few
Yeah.
years later, I studied aikido, and
Yeah.
I didn't do as well as I in aikido because I think I had a brute force mentality, and I wanted to punch rather than dance and throw. So, and
Yeah.
then I studied qigong. I looked at judo, Brazilian jiu-jitsu. I went through a bunch of stuff, but you can hear this. I didn't commit to any one of them.
Yeah.
And so I was in the martial arts cafe. sample this, sample this, sample this. What made you stick to your guns, so to speak? Why did you keep going back?
Yeah, so I mean, first I can address my father never actually was into competing at all. He competed a
Ah,
couple of times, but then his school, there was no people competing. I just went to a training camp and they said, you have the opportunity to become a national team member, but
nice.
you got to compete. So I went back and I told my father, I want to compete. He said, sure, I'll support you. And then with that start, our whole club uh, started competing, and that helped us a lot to grow that in that arena. But I think the reason why I didn't stop is because what I've learned is that martial arts are for life. So this
Mm,
is something that I do because I love it, and even though I don't have to punch and kick every day, if you have a black if you earn a black belt in karate or any martial art, the mindset is that you are now when you have that, it's a responsibility to show up as a certain human being.
ah,
And that's why my father says when I passed my black belt exam as a 12-year-old, he said, now you can start training karate.
wow.
Because
Mm,
now is when you start, because let's be honest, you don't understand that much when you're a black belt. And I think a lot of people, they give themselves, I think you should give yourself credit, but life mastery takes a long time. Just like
yeah,
you writing more than 80 books, if you compare your knowledge from your first book to today and that whole
yeah.
process, it's incomparable. It's a journey that the only way to learn that is to be in the arena and to keep evolving and competing against yourself. So it was never about, obviously, I had goals of winning medals and all of that, but the most important thing was, how can I get better?
That is the $1 million question for all of us. I really think that is the goal. There's no finish line in self-improvement, but I think there is the goal of always getting better, the constant, never stopping improvement. And since I just used the word goal, what did you learn about goal setting in from karate? And of course, I know you're in real estate, luxury
Yeah,
sales, and you have a lot that we can be talking about there. I'm
yeah,
personally fascinated with martial arts, so I'm kind of
yeah.
locked in there for a
Me too.
little bit.
Me too.
And so I want to pick your brains and find out
Yeah.
what you can teach me and everybody watching or listening. So when it comes to goal setting, you won the one medal, but didn't you win other ones or other awards or other medals?
Yeah, so I want to be clear. I came third place at the Shotokan World Championship. So I wasn't number one, but I was probably the happiest. And in that competition, there
That's
was
good.
also because it was 20 years in the making and everything aligned for me that day. But I got to be honest with you, during that competition, there was a big team from South Africa, from kids to older gentlemen, and their whole tournament that week, they were singing, they were yelling, and they had so much fun. I think not many of them did medal at that world championship, but for me, those were the big winners because I hadn't seen that type of happiness. And they were,
Oh,
for a lot of them, it was the first time traveling to Australia, experiencing that country with people from all over the world and competing to become the best. So I think we got to take a step back and realize, it's of course it's cool to say that I have a world medal. It's cool that I was a national champion 8 times. I've hundreds of medals. My father had to start giving them away to other kids because there was too many. But in reality, what is it that is important? It's for you to try to be better. And looking at goals, for me, the reason why I started studying goal settings very early is because I didn't have what I wanted. So I was a short kid, a chubby kid, a bullied kid. The only place where I kind of belonged was in the karate school. Uh, because I was chubby, I I almost got when I was, this was in fifth or sixth, I was 11, 12 years old. I started eating less and started, I don't know if a doctor would look at it, it was probably some type of eating disorder. But anyways, I I became very skinny. But now I
hmm.
was also very short. So when I was 15, if I would dig up some pictures, I'm short and super skinny. And I thought I was looking like Bruce Lee almost in my mind, but I didn't attract any girls, which I wanted. And I was, it was a whole So there were so many things in my life that I felt was missing. So I started looking at what do these people do that are good at what they do. And I realized they have a plan, they write down their plan, they are surrounded by people better than them, and they take daily small actions to accomplish that. So I started modeling that and studying, and that's the reason why. I mean, the reason why I started the podcast is, and I've interviewed people way before that, is because I wanted to learn how to attract other people in my life, how to attract what I really want. And the more I dig deeper into this, now I'm realizing that the formula is fairly simple. You got to find out what you want. If you don't know what you want, you got to start with something. Don't end up in analysis paralysis. Start with something, and then you can always change. Once you know what you want, make a plan, write these things down. When am I going to do this? What am I going to do? As an athlete, I knew exactly when I'm going to eat, where I'm going to train, and don't make it too difficult on yourself. Do two or three things every day, and then just go and do it. That's actually the formula. It's super simple, but it works. And most of the people that I have interviewed on my podcast, they say around that same thing. So I'm curious,
Mhm.
like you can go deeper and deeper depending on how advanced you want. But this an idiot can understand it and get a better life next year. And I think that's what I'm trying to get to. It's not that hard once you make the commitment with yourself and know what the next step is.
That is a beautiful summation right there. And I think you are correct that if people read Think and Grow Rich or some of the success literature, they would hear those common elements in those books. And particularly the other people I've interviewed, the other people you've interviewed. But I got to put your feet in the fire a little bit
Yeah, let's do
because
it.
because of the people that are watching. I was there, I was homeless, I was in poverty, I was skeptical, I was belligerent, I was angry, and I just would put this stuff down. When people would say you have to go for what you want, I'd be like a lot of people and shrug and go, I don't know what I want.
Yeah.
So let's look at that first. If somebody says, I don't know what I want, that's great. You wanted to be in karate. That's great, Joe. You wanted to write books. What is somebody sitting there? They've been through the pandemic. They're out of work. They're struggling to pay the bills, and they're watching or listening to us, and they're thinking, that'd be great to go for what I want. Gee, I wish I knew what I wanted.
First of all, I want to acknowledge all those people that you're taking the time to watch and listen to this. And I also want to say, I love you for being here and trying to do something with your life. The
Mm,
fact that you're struggling with what you don't want is actually a good sign. It means that you're searching for something better.
mm,
And it might take a long time for you to find that out. And let's be honest, a lot of people never find out, but you have to try and you have to make a decision. And I can be honest with you and say there's probably 10, 20, 30 things that I could do instead of doing this. And if I made a decision, I would probably be pretty good at that as well because I decide and I do it. So
mm.
don't question yourself too much. Start with something. It could always change. I used to believe when I made a decision that it was a lifetime decision. It felt almost like an imprisonment in my mind. So if you feel that right now, understand you have the ability to change anytime. It's all in your mind. And the mind, life should be a game. It should be playful, to to even have that idea and think of different things. Isn't that
Mhm,
something that's cool and
mhm,
exciting? So
mhm.
try something that excites you. If that doesn't work out, try something else. But make a decision and do it for some time. I have this that has been with me the full year, and we talked about this on my show. I haven't reached all my goals this year, and it made me think a lot. But one thing that I have here, it says, show up for yourself for a full year and watch what happens. So I would like to encourage everybody, make a decision and show up for yourself for a full year, which means from January 1st to January 31st, 11:59, all the way through, because that's when the magic happens in my mind. And it might take even longer, but don't give yourself an out and just watch what happens. And then you can make a change.
I love it. I love it. A couple things come to mind. One is I remember Wayne Dyer pointing out to people that a lot of folks made life decisions when they were in high school. I'm going to be an attorney. I'm going to be a doctor. I'm going to be whatever. And they were kids. And they found out later that they didn't like what they were doing. And Wayne Dyer said, you can change. When
Yeah,
you made your decision to go in a particular profession, you did it when you were an immature teenager.
yeah,
And so it isn't a life sentence. You can change. And so I'm reminding people that if you're not going in the
yeah,
right direction, you can look around and choose something. The other thing that I would add is that in my book, The Attractor Factor, I always say step one is to know what you don't want.
yeah,
And if you know what you don't want, which is real easy for most of us, we don't want to be confused. Don't want to be broke. We don't want to be unhealthy. The second step is turn what you don't want into what you do want. So if you don't want to be lonely, I want to be in a romantic relationship. If you don't want to be broke, I want to be financially free. If I don't want to be confused, I want to be clear. And so that's kind of a brain hack that people can
yeah,
use. The other thing you said that I wanted to ask you about, because I love what you're saying and I love your perspective here, is do something every day, two or three things every day. One of the things I've often heard is that people don't know what to do. They will often tell me, I don't know what to do. I don't know where to start. I got my goal. I know what I want. What do I do? How do I get there? Where's the map? Where's the strategy? What would you advise them?
yeah. I mean, the first thing I would say, just to go back to what we were talking about, just thinking about it, and it's not always knowing what you want and what you do. It's also how you do it. So if you're in a position today where you're not in a job that you enjoy, or your life is not really exactly where you are, try to live that life with grace and be kind and serve and just watch what happens, because some people might say,
Mm,
hey, this is great for you, but I'm kind of stuck in this situation. I'm going to work here. This is my father's company. I'm going to take it over, and it feels like a curse. But understand it, again, it's in your mind. You can show up with grace and help people in what you do today. So I think
mm,
that's important to to acknowledge that we can do things we don't like and learn to like them, and actually also do them with grace and love, and
mm,
do them well, because there are some, not every, I mean, I personally believe that there's very few people that love cleaning toilets. There might be a few people that really loves it, but that's something that we need in this world, and there are people that are doing that, that are doing it with grace and joy,
mm,
which I think is very, very difficult,
mm.
but it's a mind play again. So going back to, uh, can you remind me of your question again?
It was about the two or three things to do every day if they don't
Yeah,
really know where to start, if they're not sure what to do. I love what
yeah,
you're saying there, but are there any specifics, or if people are looking for specifics, what
yeah,
would you suggest?
yeah. I think you have to look at, I've been studying success just like yourself, and most people try to start their day in a positive manner. And what that means for you, I don't know. I can just give advice for me: breathing, working
Mhm,
out, get my heart rate, gives me joy. I made a list of the things that makes me happy a couple of years ago. So I would encourage that. And for me, it was a lot of simple things. It was working out. It was having my first coffee of the day. It was smiling to a stranger. It was going to bed and just laying in my bed. Like 3 or 4 or 10 things I wrote down. And I realized most of these things I do on a daily basis.
mm,
And that
mm,
helped me to realize, you know, I'm actually living a pretty good life. I might not have everything I want, but I have more than I need. And if I can do these couple of things every day, that's awesome. And I meet people, Dr. Joe, that says, you are drinking so much coffee, man. You're always at the coffee shop. But I never have time for that. But I ask them, how can't you give yourself 5 minutes to enjoy something you really like and then go out and do other stuff? I don't understand that. How busy are you? Or how can't you call your mom and say I love you? Or just send a text and a picture and say, "Hey mom, I love you. I miss you. I'm busy today. I'll call you tomorrow." That's a simple thing that's going to give you joy, and I think everybody can do that.
mhm. What's beautiful about the descriptions that you just gave is that they're all ways to elevate your vibration. from a law of attraction standpoint, you're bringing up the vibration that is going to attract more to match it. So if you are coming from a joy place, you're going to bring into experiences that are going to be joyful to match it and increase it. So
Yeah.
I love what you were talking about there. Plus, it's about being happy. It's about positivity. It's about feeling good and treating yourself good. So I love all of that. So I have a different kind of question for you, Peter, and I hope you don't mind
Yeah.
me asking this because I'm
No,
sneaking in now to see what I can get out of you
not at all.
with all of your experience in karate, like 30 some years of experience. Did you learn an esoteric technique that the rest of us might not know, but could really use to apply?
What? So can you explain esoteric, because I don't know the word.
Exoteric
To be
is
honest.
a mystery school technique. One of the ones that, it's big business for karate now, and it has been for all the century and part of the last century. And so there's a whole lot of people teaching you how to punch, how to kick, the Cobra Kai method of doing business, but they don't teach the fine art of getting what you want, creating what you want, using internal power. This is one reason I was fascinated with the Tai Chi and Qi Gong and the Qi oriented martial arts because they use the internal power and directed it to help get what you want, including defeating an opponent if you were in that situation. It wasn't just the physical. So I'm looking for the mystery school, the secret stuff, and what I would call the esoteric, but that's what I mean. Secret, mystery
Yeah.
school, stuff that they don't
Yeah.
advertise.
So I can say my father, he's one of the best senseis I've met. And obviously, I'm biased because he's my father and he's my sensei. But he's kind of old school, like the karate way. He says,
Mhm.
do this. And there is a message behind it that he would never share. And that is something you only get with the experience. It's almost like back in the days, a student came to his teacher and said, "Can you look at my kata?" And kata is a form for people that don't understand. He said, "Yeah, how many have you done?" "I've done 10. Oh, no, go back, train. Okay, he come back. How many have you done? Can you look at my kata? I've done more now. How many have you done? 100. They say, "No, go back, train." And then he comes back again and says, "Can you look at my kata? I've done more now. How many have you done? I've done 1,000. Say, go back, train. Come back when you have done 10,000." He says, and the student doesn't understand. What is this? What am I doing? But once he passes that, bridge, he starts to realize things about himself, about
Mm,
confidence, about showing up for yourself. So there's
mm,
so many hidden messages, and I
mhm,
know a lot of people want those shortcuts, but the only way to find those lessons, and I think this is in life in general, is some you can read a book about it, but the only way to feel it is to pass through it.
mm,
And
mm,
this is something that comes with, a lot of students say the 10,000 hour rule, or I don't think it's a defined hour, but with mastery you go through all the challenges and it gives you a beauty of life because you get to experience storms and rain and also the sunshine, and you come out of it with an experience and a feeling that only you know.
mm. On your podcast, you've interviewed 250 different people, the I Love Success podcast. What I'm noticing is when I interview people, I learn a tremendous amount. I thought I knew a
Yeah.
lot because I read a lot and I've written a lot and I'm turning 70 years old. So I've been around. But then interview these people and I'm like, I didn't know that. I didn't think of that. That's an insight I didn't know. So out of these 250 people you've interviewed, what are a couple highlights? What were a couple takeaways you got? And maybe they shook your head a little bit and you went, "What? I didn't realize that technique or that hack or that possibility or that story." What comes to
Yeah.
mind?
There's a lot of things, and at first I just want to share. I don't know if you watched Highlander. uh, Highlander was a show when he was fighting somebody, when he kind of won, he cut off their head, and he
Yes.
got all their knowledge into himself. So this is almost how I feel with podcasting and meeting successful people. And that's why it's all blended in. So for people listening, everything I'm saying, this is not me. These are things that I've learned from
Mm,
people so much better than me. And Maya Angelou said it so great. I come as one, but I stand as 10,000. And
yeah.
that's literally how I feel. So a lot of the things that I'm saying, it most likely is not my idea, but it works for me and I'm sharing it.
Right.
So looking at the people I have met, write down your goals has been one of the most important things that people say.
Mm,
Write down your goals, pen to paper. And I even wrote a book about it called The Goal Book: How to Achieve Your Dreams and Create a Better Life. But that's one thing. You got to write down your goals.
mhm,
The other thing that I've also learned is that you got to ask yourself, are you chasing something or are you running away from something? And if
mm,
we look at a lot of big achievers that I've met, and if you look overall, you'll see there's a lot of people that have accomplished a lot of things, but they're, in my mind, not successful, because success for me, and this is different for everybody, is joy and being happy. So
mm,
I think in the outer world, we say performance and we say that's success. So you can say, oh, Peter, he's a world medalist, and that's super cool because at one point in time I was really good at something and then I did that. But if I'm disrespectful to the people around me, and if I'm alcoholic, if I don't know how to, like, that's not success for me, even though people might see that picture and say, oh, he's a successful guy.
mm.
So I think we got to distinguish success and performance, and that's why I want to talk to all these people. And most of them, they realize when they achieve their goal, they still have work to do because
Yeah.
they did that to be loved. And we do all crazy shit to be loved.
Right.
uh,
Right.
so self love is something that I've learned from all these people. They share it and they say, hey, it's not about achieving all these goals, because you gotta love yourself. Um,
That's
what else
beautiful.
have I learned? Yeah, that's one big item. And I think the other thing is also that the most successful people, they value quiet time. They're
Mm,
thinkers. They like to, one of my favorite things with waking up early is not like, I don't technically I don't like waking up. I would rather sleep a little bit more, but it's quiet and I
mm,
get to see night turn into day, and I get to sit
mm,
with myself before all the distractions and create my own person. Who am
mhm,
I when nobody is
mhm,
watching? What are my
mm.
thoughts and how do I speak to myself? And I think that exploration, if you look at a lot of successful people, they have come very far in their relationship with themselves.
This show is called Zero Limits Living. So at some point during it, I usually ask my guest, do we have any limits? So, Peter, do you think we have any limits?
I think that there are probably limits, and it's the limits we put on ourselves.
Mm,
And then
mhm,
there might be limits, if you talk to an engineer, there might be some limits as well,
mhm.
but I'm not an engineer. So for me, I see it like, how can I change my mind and how can I go
Yeah,
beyond? Because I
yeah.
have to be honest, Dr. Joe, I have a lot of limits in my life.
Mhm,
I have limiting beliefs and I don't believe I can do a lot of things. And that's why I read books, I get to interview people like yourself, and kind of see how can I improve and kind of shatter those limits. So I've realized that in my life, and that's why if I look where I started in my life, I'm very happy of my journey. But I also realized that if I want to go to the next level and live kind of a big life, or whatever you want to call it, where you can share a lot and help a lot of people, there are so many limits that I need to crush, and they're all up here, unfortunately.
what is the best book you've read and hopefully reread to help you crush those limits?
I think there's I love the book The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari. That was
Ah,
a
mhm,
really good book for me.
mhm,
And I also love the book The Slight Edge, which is a
mhm,
great book. But there's so many books that I've read, and the thing is, I've read Think and Grow Rich, I've read all those
Yeah.
books, but what I'm realizing is, and I'm ordering too many books. That's what I'm realizing, and I'm reading them, and I don't know exactly where the information comes from. But I'm so
Mhm.
passionate about all these books. So
Mhm.
I think my goal for the next year is to read more of the stories of people who have lived through
Yeah.
specific moments in time that are not around us anymore,
Mm.
because I get to do this, but I would love to get into the head of other people that had lived in a different era, and that's something that I haven't explored yet so much.
I think that's one of the wisest things anybody could do because if you don't read the biographies, you're pretty much destined to learn from your own blood, sweat, and tears. If
Yeah,
you do read biographies, then you can learn from their blood, sweat, and tears.
yeah,
So it's kind of a shortcut to get to the head of the class. Go read biographies. Go read Teddy Roosevelt. Go read. He wrote autobiography. Yeah, he wrote autobiographies, and there's biographies on them. I just started rereading Jack Dempsey's book. He was one of the early heavyweight boxing champions of the world, and I thought I was going to be heavyweight boxing champion of the world when I was 17 years old. I hadn't met any heavyweight boxing champions at that point. Point being, as I read these books, these people come to life for me and they're telling me their life lessons. And I'm going, oh, yeah, don't do that. Because what they did got them into whatever trouble it was. I'm going to save myself that trouble by reading their books.
yeah.
The other thing I wanted to ask you, when you knew we were going to be talking and I was going to interview you, was there a question you were hoping I was going to ask? Was there a story you were really itching to tell? Is there something you were you're just sitting there waiting for the moment to be able to share this? And I haven't given it to you yet. So here's your chance to say whatever it is you were hoping I would bring up for you.
Thank you, Dr. Joe. I think the first thing I just want to say to people, have the courage to ask.
Hmm.
And I'm I'm so grateful to be here on this show with you. And the only reason I'm here is because I asked you. Uh, I had the courage to ask, and now when I'm listening and watching to this, I feel like I should be asking you questions. So it's an honor, and I want to share that with people.
Hmm.
Somewhere we need to stop put limits on ourselves and
Hmm.
dare to ask. If there's somebody you want to ask out, go for it. If you want to, try to travel somewhere, look it up and see how much it will cost you and how you can get there. If there's a father, a mother you haven't spoken to in a long time, but you're too stubborn to reach out to them again, look at your life and look and see in 100 years, you might regret it. So I think that my point is, and my main message is that it all comes back to your self love, and I want you to know that I love you wherever you are in your life. If there's anything I can do
Hmm.
to help you with your goals and this mindset, I'm happy to do it. And it actually gives me so much. And I want to also say, just try and see what happens. Show up for yourself. Don't put limits on yourself, and don't get ahead of yourself with what's going to happen, because I meet people all the time. It's like, what if I do this, then this happens, then that happens, and that, and you're like, you're creating a kind of a labyrinth in your own mind with challenges.
Hmm.
Just go out and do it, because if you look at every person that is successful, I can look at my own life. There's been so much pain from trying to accomplish my dreams, but it's also been so much joy. And the reality of it, it actually feels, I mean, I fall flat on my face when I did my absolute best, and that is a bitter pill to swallow, but it
Wow.
also an incredible feeling, because I know, like, I did everything I could, but it wasn't enough. And what does that tell you? There's something you need to learn.
Yeah.
It's not about how bad you are or a bad person. There's something you need to learn. And there is knowledge out there. There's so many people I know in karate, there's so many people that want to help you in mindset, in the world of the law of attraction. There's so many people that want to help you, but you got to ask. Nobody's going to come and say, "Hey, can I help you?" That might happen to one in a million, but most of the time it will be you. And know by asking somebody, they also get joy from helping.
That is really beautiful. Wow. Well, Peter, I can't thank you enough. You are a gem. You've got great wisdom. You've got experience. You have a lot of insights. You've been sharing them here. Where do people go to find you, to find your book, and to find your I Love Success podcast?
Very easy. Everywhere where you have podcasts, you can go to and just search I Love Success Podcast. I have another show about real estate, which is called Black Belt in Real Estate, if you're curious
Ah,
about that. Other than that, just search my name, Peter Jumrukovsky. It's not the easiest last name to spell, but Google will help you. So don't worry. And you can find me on Instagram, YouTube, everywhere. And I'm happy to connect. Again, I respond to all the messages I get. I realized I was a small, chubby kid who had a lot of dreams, and because I went for it, and I was able to get the courage to ask. I've been rewarded with so much in my life, and the one thing that gives me the most joy is if somebody asks me for help, because then I have an ability to give back.
that is beautiful. Peter, thank you. I can't wait to our next visit and to our
Yeah.
visit in person where we see who can drink the most coffee in one sitting.
Let's do it. Dr. Joe, I just want to acknowledge you. And again, this is kind of a dream come true. And I'm not saying this just to say it. I say it because I mean it. Because to be able to have the ability to answer questions from somebody like you that have so much knowledge, it means the world to me. And thank you for everything you do. I truly appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you. And I appreciate you. Well, everybody, you've been watching or listening to Zero Limits Living. Every week, I bring you inspiration and information to transform your life. I'm putting all the shows in one place. You can go to ZeroLimitsLivingTV.com. You can find this on Roku and Apple TV and Amazon Fire, but just go to ZeroLimitsLivingTV.com. It's a reminder you can have your free session and your overview of Miracles Coaching. Go to miraclescoaching.com. Check out my new program, mentaltimetravel.system.com. And I want to thank Lux Media Studios for putting this show on, Candace Barr for inviting me to create the show, Chris, who's running the engineering department today, and all of you for making the time to watch. You're the ones who are awakening the planet. You are the ones who are the light workers. I love you. I'm grateful for you. I'll see you next time. Expect miracles.
Glutathione is a big word. It's the body's own master antioxidant. It's a scavenger for free radical, bacteria, and viruses. There are no products in the market with the ingredient NASET. NASET increases the production of glutathione that's in our body already to strengthen and enhance our immune system, elevate sense of well-being, support muscle strength and endurance, cognitive function, and liver support. It helps with increased energy and blood sugar regulation. Get your bottle of GSH Plus from www.salvationnutra.com.